Shabbat Shalom. It's with a deep sense of gratitude that I speak with you about my recent trip to Israel on this Shabbat, Shabbat Nachamu, the Shabbat of comfort. And I must say, I'm truly filled with a sense of nechama from my journey to Israel. Why nechama? It's not that Israel is simple. It's not that Israel has resolved its challenges, but rather it's a nechama, a comfort that comes from chedva, joy. The Hebrew word in the Torah used to describe the joy of being in covenant with God or close to God. And before this trip, I felt very distant from the aspect of God linked to the land of Israel. And now, as a result of your generosity of my time and of your resources, I feel that I'm much closer to the land of Israel, the people of Israel, and the aspect of the Jewish story that is unfolding in Israel at this time. I'm also grateful because on this Shabbat's Torah portion, Va'etkhanan, Moses pleads to God, Moshe Rabbeinu, our greatest teacher, asks God for the ability to enter Israel, yet God does not relent. And it's no small thing, it's not lost on me, that me, a small rabbi in relationship to Moshe Rabbeinu, was able to travel to the land of Israel. Along those lines, I know there are people in this room that this summer did not have a chance to go to the land of Israel because of the war with Iran. And for me, the experience was, it looked like I was not going to be able to go and I was going to have to target another time, when all of a sudden, miraculously, the seas parted and I was able to go. Our group leader, Zohar Volosky, on the 5th day of the Iran war, in fact, we had a Zoom session where I thought we were going to be given the tough talk that we couldn't go, said, okay, everyone, and he was a prophet. He said, the United States is going to join the war. The war is going to be over in a week. Now let's talk about what we're going to pack. And everything he said came true, and I feel very grateful for that. I'm grateful also for this platform to share my experience, because when people ask me in passing about my experience, one-word answers just don't do it justice. How was your trip? If I say great, and that's true, but it was also filled with moments of sadness and heaviness. I could also say sad, but I would miss the joy, the resilience, and life that I encountered in every person who I met in Israel. So today, I want to open up these emotional faucets and share the fullness of it all. To give this some structure, though, I will use two frameworks. One I call 678, and the other the Hebrew letter Chet. Now, 678 is a framework we've used, the Jewish people, following the atrocities of October 7th. I don't know if you've heard about the framing of who we were on October 6th. It was different to the people who we were on October 7th, and was different to who we were as a people on October 8th. I would like to internalize these three numbers and compare it to what has been going on inside of me, and I believe that for many of you in this room, there's going to be aspects of my experience that you can relate to. In Judaism, 6 represents almost being there. The day before creation is complete. After 6 days, the world was ready for Shabbat. Humanity stood just one step away from being with God. In Israel, I saw 6 in the rush of the shuk on Friday afternoon. Hopefully some of you have experienced this. Crowds scrambling for just one more item. I just need challah, I just need rugla, I just need botnim. Before my trip, I lived in a state of 6. 1 month before departure, the Iran war broke out. I thought, if only it ends, if only the U.S. steps in, if only that missile lands in the right place that destroys the exact nuclear facility. The if only feeling was everywhere. I prayed many times over the past 2 years. If only Aviatar David were freed. His name we recite when we light Shabbat candles at our home. If only Amiram's Kofer's body was returned. His name I wear on my wrist. Haven't we all lived in that place of almost, feeling we are on the brink, whether in prayer or politics or conversations with those who we're talking with about Israel? I almost said earlier today, before we said the prayer for the hostages, that I did not think I was going to come back from this trip and we would have to say that prayer. 7, completion. 7 is wholeness. Shabbat arrives, the candles are lit, the phone is off, there is nothing left to do. For me, 7 was boarding that plane to Israel. But 7 is not always positive. I thought for sure that while I was in Israel, at least 10 hostages would be released. I could feel it, but it didn't happen. It was a bitter completion, a moment of throwing my hands in the air and saying, I'm done with the prayer, with the conversation, because it seems like nothing is possible. 7 is also a number of hidden gratitude. Many a Hasidic tale tells the story of someone who feels this sense of incompletion in their lives, only to sit around the Shabbat table or to be present in their community on Saturday morning and feel and realize the many blessings that exist in their lives. For me, this experience happened on the El Al flight. At 2 a.m. in the morning, I woke up from my attempt at getting some sleep, and I turned on my light to get a snack. A flight attendant who probably had to wake up came over concerned. What was wrong? What was the emergency? I turned to her and asked, could I get something to eat? And she gave me this look. And I read into it as if she was trying to tell me through this look, do you know what just happened 2 weeks ago in relationship to the victory in the war with Iran? Do you realize how lucky you are to be on a plane to Israel? She was right. 8, a new beginning. 8 is the day after Shabbat. It is waking up after completion and asking, now what? It's the number of renewal and reset. 6 and 7 were my runway to the trip, but my actual time in Israel, that was 8. It was a fresh start in my relationship with the country. I hadn't been there in 2 years. I hadn't been there since October 7th. And in many ways, landing in Israel felt like it was my first time arriving there. 6, 7, and 8. I now want to explain what I got out of the trip, what I saw in Israel, and what I'd like to bring back to our community. All of these can be described through the Hebrew letter, words that begin with the Hebrew letter chet, which according to Gematria, chet represents 8. Chinuch, education. The root of chinuch appears in Hanukkah and means to rededicate. After 2 years of experiencing Israel only through news articles, lectures, and social media, the trip was a chance to rededicate myself to Israel, an opportunity you made possible here at Beth Am. This trip that I attended, though, was organized by JNF USA and Kakal with remarkable foresight. JNF USA and Kakal chose to send on a mission educators, specifically Hebrew school teachers and directors, who serve students outside the Jewish day school system. These are the kids most likely to encounter anti-Semitism or may carry apathy towards their Judaism, or have seen distorted narratives about Israel without the daily support of a Jewish environment. JNF saw this need, and I very much respect JNF USA's vision on this. They framed the trip as a living model of how to teach Israel. We studied Jewish text with Chavruta partners, study partners, while on the bus, and applied them to the places we visited. At the Alexander Muss High School in Israel, Gavriel Portman, who was one of the teachers at the school, he served as our tour guide. not just through locations, but through pedagogical thinking. We would often go to a place, he would recite a passage, and then ask us, what is the connection here? What does it mean? What is Mark Twain trying to say? We observed lessons, though, when we were on the campus on Zionism and ways to answer the why Israel question. And I would love to see their educators visit us here at Beth Amen in our schools. And if there are any teens who are considering Alexander Muss, I wholeheartedly recommend it. The other chet that described my experience was chaver. If you look at the Hebrew letter chet, you'll see that when it is written in the Torah, it's two vavs that are linking to one another. Chaver is the Hebrew word for friend, but much more powerfully, it refers to two people who keep each other standing, who help each other to maintain themselves. The Talmud teaches if you don't have a chaver, it's like not living. And I think there's this idea that I need someone else to help me to stand up, especially during challenging moments. How many of us have experienced moments of anti-Semitism, moments of being challenged and feeling alone? And what we are truly looking for, perhaps, is not so much facts or the right answer, but just someone who we can go to for support, who can validate the truth that we carry. And I found this on this trip. It was good to be with colleagues, with fellow educators. It was good not to be alone. It was good to be on a bus sharing ideas with other individuals who carry the same responsibility of educating our youth and maintaining a faculty team. We held each other during tough moments. We had lots of fun. And very interesting was the experience of going to a shelter. Twice there were Yemenite missiles sent to Israel, and twice we were sent to a shelter. And it was very interesting to feel the sense of community within that shelter. By the way, both the missiles were intercepted, but nevertheless, it was nice to be surrounded by friends and community as opposed to experiencing that by yourself. So what was it that I saw in Israel? What was it that I can bring back to you? I want to share with you three other chets. The chet of chaser, something that is missing, the chet of chayim, of life, and the chet of chison, resilience. Chaser. On the first night that I arrived in Israel, I went for a walk in Tel Aviv. And while I walked in Tel Aviv, I was walking through the shops, and I noticed three interesting pieces. One was, some of you may recall the Agam fountain in the center of Dizengoff Square. That used to be a source of everyone gathering, and when I went with the last time I brought our 11th and 12th graders there, we actually had an air guitar show as the fountain was going off. We had a lot of fun. Now, when you go there, it's covered with memorials of soldiers who have died fighting the many wars that Israel's gone through in the last 2 years, and individuals having signs and holding onto the hostages that are no longer there. I then walked down the street, and I saw it looked like a construction site surrounded by a banner of Israel B'Yachad, Israel's together. I found an interesting sign to put around this construction site. And then I panned behind me and around me, and I saw a tall building and then smaller buildings around me. All had been destroyed because I was now walking through a site where one of the Iranian missiles had hit, 650 kilograms, and right in the middle of the city. What was once a busy intersection was now in the process of being repaired. And lastly, along that night, I stopped at Golda's Ice Cream. And to me, this really captured the entire trip. I'm now a huge fan, just a full confession, of Golda's Ice Cream, which has become a fad in Israel. It's a franchise of the last 5 years. Golda comes from Anita. That was her mom. And Anita's ice cream has been a fan for the last 20 years. I walked in there, a busy Tel Aviv night. Everyone's sitting and having ice cream. And I don't know about you, but I'm someone that likes samples. So I helped myself to these incredible flavors, like white chocolate cookie ice cream. I mean, only in Israel can they come up with like the most amazing flavors. So I sampled this. I sampled pistachio that had like a crust on top of the ice cream bin of fresh pistachio nuts. It's like unbelievable. And then my favorite, milk chocolate with like a pretzel ganache on top. It was so good. And I'm sampling each one. And then I come upon a bin that's empty. And I look at the bottom of the bin, and there's a yellow poster, a little sign that says chaser, missing. And it's a reminder that there are still hostages that are missing. And one of my most meaningful experience of this trip was, yes, I ordered an ice cream cone, and I enjoyed the sweetness of Israel, and I also had the sense of comfort, knowing that while I was enjoying this cone, I was also mindful of the loss that I was experiencing and that the society was feeling. It takes incredible courage, right, to be able to not deny the challenging realities of the moment, and also not to deny the need for us to return to life, but to carry both of those together. And that's what I was experiencing when I had that ice cream cone. I also, along the lines of Chaser, we heard the testimony of Moran Stella Yanai, who was someone who was captured and was able to be freed, and she shared her story to all the groups who had attended. By the way, this mission was not just, I should have said this with Chaver, was not just for American educators, but there are groups of educators, Jewish educators from around the globe that also had parallel trips, and we would come together every night for these shared experiences. By the way, one of these groups was a group of Jewish educators from Ukraine, which was fascinating to hear their story. That's another Devar Torah. But nevertheless, one of those nights when we were all together, we heard the testimony of Moran Stella Yanai, and we also saw the documentary by the photojournalist Ziv Karen, who documented the horrors of October 7th, and also stayed with the individuals that he photographed and those who went through rehabilitation, whether it be psychological or physical. He actually followed that as well. And that's another Devar Torah, but it was really powerful to watch those stories as well. I went to Nova. Nova was the site of the concert that was the target of brutal murders. I learned a number of things. One is a large percentage were actually able to survive that, which I found encouraging. But as far as being chaser, one of my experience there was the way the individuals who died are memorialized are these makeshift memorials that their friends or family create. And on the top of every memorial is a picture of that person. And on the bottom, there's things that they were important to them, or sometimes they have their stories written out. But it sets up this powerful scene of just this ocean of young faces. People at this concert were filled with so much innocence, life, and joy. And as you're going through there, you feel that sense of chaser, of that 1,000 that just are no longer here. And lastly, along the lines of chaser, it's interesting, the first night we were in Israel, we had a big dance festival. They hosted a dance festival. I was like, what's going on here? Should we be dancing? I'm going to talk about what that meant. But I said to them, I said, there's still a war going on, and there are still hostages. Maybe this isn't the right place. And what my group leader said is like, thank you so much. And as a result, every morning, what we did was we would recite as a group the prayer for the hostages, the song Achenu, and a beautiful member of our group, Cantor Galit Dadun Cohen, would sing it. And it was a great way of seeing the beauty of Israel while being mindful of chaser. There are still people who are missing. The next part, Chaim. So you could hear that even as I was talking about chaser, it is intertwined with a life that is unfolding. I talked to you about ice cream. Later that night, I went to the beach of Tel Aviv, that first night I was there, and I dipped my feet in the Mediterranean. The beach was crowded with Israelis playing soccer, playing volleyball, just being out. And it was a reminder that life continues in Israel. The restaurants of Tel Aviv, of course, I wouldn't be able to have a full trip without visiting a number of eateries, one of which was a restaurant called Ha'achim. Totally recommend everyone to go there. Ha'achim means the brothers. On October 8th, they closed their restaurant and made food for the soldiers and for the families that were affected, that were displaced as a result of the acts of October 7th. And in the back of this, and the restaurant was packed, and it was hip, and it was cool, and the food was amazing. And they have a store in the back where they sell T-shirts, and the T-shirts have in creative ways the names of the neighborhoods in the north of Israel and in the south that, again, have been affected by the recent war. And all the proceeds of these shirts go to these supporting these communities. We also on our trip visited the Margalit startup city in the north of Israel. This is a JNF USA project. It's very impressive. They're investing in these areas that are on the frontiers of Israel. There's a lot of food tech coming out of there. And while we were there, we met their leaders. And they are going on, business as usual. Innovating, trying to find ways of bringing investment, trying to find ways of bringing people together socially, because when people all come to an area and socialize, ideas can be exchanged, and that furthers the business investment. We also went to Kfar Giladi. I'm good, thanks, honey. Kfar Giladi, that was a kibbutz in the north, literally on the border of with Lebanon. They shared their experience of having to be evacuated, and only those that could defend the kibbutz remained. They had to live in the dark so they wouldn't be targeted by Hezbollah snipers. But nevertheless, they stayed there, and they returned there. And when they were able to determine that it was safe to return, they brought their children to the border of Lebanon to show them that there is now a buffer zone of safety, so that it was safe for them to, so that their children would feel a sense of safety. Next thing I want to share about is chison. And chison is the Hebrew word for resilience. We went to the Druze village and we met a woman by the name of Basma Hino. Basma was a woman who lost her husband in one of the earlier wars. The Druze in Israel are strongly supportive of the state. They send their children in and serve in the IDF. Another point of the trip, by the way, we went to an army base, and we saw Druze soldiers amongst a number of other soldiers, and he had all of these, I think the letter was a shin on their lapel, and we asked, well, why does this person have a shin? What did they do wrong? And the answer was, when you are a soldier, your mefaked, your leader, is constantly checking on whether or not you do a number of things, like your hand has to be on your gun, you have to be drinking enough water, and things like that. And every time you do it right, you get a bonus point, right? And that was their way of highlighting, the correct behavior, which just shows the devotion of the Druze community. But anyways, along the lines of resilience, she committed herself to making meals for her son's team in the troops that he served in for the Israeli army. And one day she made meals, and she was there, and she noticed that some of her son's friends weren't eating it, and she wanted to find out why. And they told her that they kept kosher and they couldn't eat a non-kosher meal. So this Druze woman figured out a way to make her restaurant kosher. JNF USA is a partner with her, and we were able to meet her, hear her story. By the way, it was right at the same time when those of you who are following the news saw the tension of the Druze community in Syria. We learned about that because there was a traffic jam and in the north because the Druze were protesting. And it was an example. The way Israel managed it was, okay, we hear you. Druze, you have your space. Please, you have a space to protest. We understand it's difficult. And Israel moved forward in a way that demonstrated they heard the Druze. And that was conveyed when we met with the local sheikh of the town that shared that he is very concerned about his brethren, and he expressed the importance that Israel support them. There's chison in a bomb shelter. Again, none of the missiles reached us. But one thing that I noticed there was, for me, it wasn't a heavy tone going into the bomb shelter. And it sat with me of like, well, wait a second, why isn't it heavy? And I looked around at all of the Israelis who were there, and it wasn't heavy because it had become a common experience. They were just used to that action. And this idea of still being able to move forward in a society that is subject to those type of sudden surprises and just continue to move on, I saw that as a demonstration of chison and resilience. I visited Sha'ar HaNegev, and there's some powerful elements of chison. There's two, I would say, types of kibbutzim in Sha'ar HaNegev. Those that successfully fended off the terrorists that attacked on October 7th. They are returning back to their kibbutzim. We at Beth have a partnership with Kibbutz Gevim. They were one of those kibbutzim. And I went to them and I said, we have a trip of teens coming. Are you interested? Do you want to take those steps of bringing your teens and our teens together? And they were really enthusiastic about that. And that to me was a sign that even having gone through their past, they were ready with resilience to return to life. I also went to Kfar Aza, and there I saw some of the saddest scenes. This is where some of the worst atrocities unfolded. And I recognize there's some littles in the room, so I won't go into detail about what I saw, but I will say the following. There were two types of scenes that I saw in the kibbutz. One was where there was a battle because members of the kibbutz were trying to get to the room where they stored all their weapons, and that was our first store. And you see some people died in that. It didn't hit me as like horrific. It hit me as, okay, there was a battle here. But then you go to the homes that were affected by the invasion. Most of that is closed off, but there are a few brave, I don't know if that's the right word, few families who chose for the purpose of education, for the purpose of edut, testimony, allow me to come back and say, I saw, I experienced, I heard, I smelled with my own eyes, the opportunity to do that. And I did walk into a number of those places, and they are pretty much left as they were, the few things removed. I don't want to go into details. They also have on those rooms signs that describe that they're copies of pictures of the text messages that were recited, that were used on that day. And I don't want to go into greater detail about that at this point, but I'm happy to when I'm having lunch. But to be able to still identify with that community, having gone through that, is an incredible act of chison, even though how they want to move forward is still up in the air. But we should be mindful of their experience. I went to Hostage Square, where families are there who are currently have people that are in their family that are in captivity, and they remain there. And what's amazing is that the University Commons, just to clarify where this is, Tel Aviv University is right next to the military center of the IDF. And there's a plaza that is right in front of the student commons and across the street from where the center of the Israeli Defense Forces are. That is where Hostage Square is. So when you see many of the protests or the rallies to bring the hostages home, that often takes place there. We heard the story of the people who are supporting those families, and I had a chance to buy an amazing educational tool that I'm not surprised is I don't have right now, and I'll explain why. One of the ways that, again, there's an expression of chison, of resilience, we have tried to capture the stories that took place unfold on October 7th, gathered 10 graphic artists and put 10 and assigned each one to a different story. And the book contains 10 separate stories that sort of give one a feeling of what took place on that day. For something that is so difficult to understand, both to comprehend as a rational, generally kind human being, or someone who could be completely frozen or destabilized by going to the depths of what happened on October 7th, I felt this book was a very powerful bridge to not get caught up in denial and to understand what took place. I showed it to one teacher, and that was like 3 days ago, and she's now sending it to a number of her friends because the book is so great. But I will have it back in my office, and if you're feeling a disconnect from what's going on and you want to have a sense of what happened, I think in a safe way, that book is available for you to read. I also, while I was at Hostage Square, of course, I saw the list of names, and at that day it was like 660, and the idea was, I was reading it like, okay, like, it should be tomorrow. Like, why is it taking so long? Another act of chison was comedy. After the trip, I went to a comedy, and I felt very healthy to sort of hear the comedians talk about their own PTSD, talk about the war, talk about the government, talk about Hamas, and their own experiences, and be able to express it in a way of comedy. In many ways, it takes one to know one, and it was very cathartic to be a part of that. And the last thing I want to say about chison was on the last night of the trip. The last night of the trip, I couldn't find a taxi or a get. And I had no problems over the course of these 2 weeks I was there. And what was going on? Why would it take so long to get a taxi? And finally I found one, and we're on our way to the train station that will take me to the airplane. And you see all these people going to their buses because there was a big rally on the main thoroughfare of the main highway in Tel Aviv, which is right in front of the train station that took place that night. It was just concluding, so people were sort of returning to their transportation. But as we were about to get off the thruway, I noticed a bunch of cars. This is like around 7 o'clock at night, so it's dark out, and a bunch of cars are weaving around this one lane. And all of a sudden, it becomes our turn. And this was one of the last images I had in the land of Israel, which was a strong man with a shirt that said Achshav, now, with 2 hands on a flag of Israel, just waving it like this in the second lane in the middle of the main freeway in Tel Aviv. That expressed a deeply rooted desire by the Israeli population for the hostages to return. So what do we do now? What do I bring back with me? I want to recognize a few more chats. Chen, grace. Things are complex, and Israel is managing with these really challenging emotions and needs. And chen is a Hebrew word for grace. And I think it's fair for us to recognize that we ourselves are overwhelmed and how to support Israel, what's our own relationship with Israel. And as we're following on through the ways that we can follow Israel, easily the heartstrings of the parts of our hearts that are connected to Jewish peoplehood are being pulled. Our own safety is being pulled, and also our own sense of morality is also being pulled. And all of these are results of what's unfolding in the world and in Israel. And I encourage all of us, in thinking about each other and in thinking about Israel, to do so with a sense of chen and grace. The other way of not having chen is the Hebrew word Hamas, which is a violence that comes from hatred. And it sounds very much like the antagonist of this time. But Hamas is a violence and anger that it's very fair for us to carry. I was listening to a podcast by Danielle Hartman and Yossi Klein Halevi, and they talk about how anger has two characteristics. One is it's a great way to bring people together. That anger, if you're feeling alone and isolated, anger brings people together, gives an immediate sense of purpose and direction. But anger is also corrosive. Anger is also not long-lasting. And before long, if we only lean into Hamas, it'll be difficult perhaps to maintain the ties that we share with each other. And perhaps I would love for the war to end soon, but if it is going to last longer, and we're going to go through multiple cycles of 6, 7, 8, again and again and again, with our hopes being brought up and then being brought down, we have to be mindful of that Hamas and turn to chen. And lastly, I want to go back to chinuch. I want to bring the sense of rededication to our community. I'm really excited this December and January to bring our 11th and 12th graders to Israel. They are going to have that experience at Kibbutz Gevim, see these sites, and also see both the chaser and the chayim. Hopefully the chaser will be removed by then. They'll be able to come back and bring their own testimony as well. I also received from JNF USA an amazing set of toolkits of teaching Israel Jewish peoplehood, and I'm really excited to share that with our schools. Lastly, as we mentioned earlier, Moses did not get to go to Israel. And the question is, why did he not get to go? And one of the arguments you could say for why he should be able to go is in Joseph. Joseph, we carry Joseph's bones to Israel. It was that important for Joseph to make it to the land of Israel. Why then did Moses not get a chance? And the Talmud shares a very interesting answer. It says that when Joseph was described living in the land of Egypt, he was Na'ar Ivri, known as a Hebrew lad. And when Moses was described outside of the land of Israel by the sisters of Jethro, they called him Ish Mitzri, an Egyptian man. And as this jive, how did they express themselves? How did they identify themselves? And for Moses, he didn't identify the Jewish people, and Joseph, he did. Rav Kook looks at it and says, well, what's the lesson here? What are we trying to say? And what Rav Kook says was that Moshe missed something. It wasn't that he was hiding, it was that he missed something. Because you could say Moses was not born in Israel. So he was a Mitzri. He hadn't made it to the land of Israel. Poor Moses. And what Rav Kook says, what Moses didn't understand was that all of us, as Jewish people, that our souls should have a sense that we were all born in Israel. And with this idea, I want to bring it back that regardless of our political affiliation, regardless of our answer for how the war should end, regardless of the many challenges that we face or influence in how we sway and how we identify, we should all see ourselves as being born in Israel by having a connection to the land and the people who are there. 1 month ago, I was guilty of the same crime of Moses, feeling so distant. And now, because of your generosity and support and that of JNF, I can do tikkun for Moses. I can feel that I was born in Israel. With chen, I invite you to join me, a sense of grace. And I invite you to ask me how I can help you and find the same connection that I share as your rabbi. Shabbat Shalom.